All right, let's trash the opposite of Ange. Let's talk about Nate Silver. And I think Nate Silver is going to be our bad tonight.
Okay. He is pretty bad.
Yeah, he's very bad. Don't worry, we're still going to do the
No
cool-up.
good, really bad for you. Not good. Believe me, not good.
So I know that you know this, Michael, because
Yes.
you've read my book. But something a lot of other people might not know is that I went to high school with Nate Silver.
I know. Yeesh.
Yep. We were both, when I was a freshman in high school, and I think he was a junior, we were both on the East Lansing High School debate team. I'm not proud to admit that. And once when we were working on that, he...
Why did you do that to me?
Wait. You said you're on the debate team?
Say, baby, put down that pipe and get my pipe up.
I know that just confirms every possible, thing that, having written a book about logic might suggest. So, I'm not proud to admit that, but
Am I inferior to John von Neumann? I don't think so, and I don't think you think so.
I think we all think so.
I definitely think Sam Harris is inferior to John von Neumann, and also to most people on the street. So,
right.
But yeah, and so I knew him slightly through that. I was over at his house once, work on that. But for a while when he started doing 538, and at the beginning he was mostly interested in baseball statistics and getting people to, because a lot of sports journalism really is bullshit in the sort of way that it prioritizes anecdotal information over any kind of statistical reasoning. And so I kind of thought, he has a
Sorry,
point.
I like anecdotal information.
Well, of course.
100%.
Some people like it.
Storytelling.
You call it anecdotal information. We call it storytelling.
Yes, it is. I mean,
and it's a great thing.
If what you want is to be entertaining.
If you want to read some beautiful writing on Norman Mailer on a boxing match, or if you want to watch Nate Silver put out some dreary piece on why
about hot hand
theory and why the Cubs have bad relief pitchers, be my guest. But some of us actually like poetry and history.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love the Norman Baylor book about the Ali, Rumble in the Jungle,
Rumble in the Jungle, baby.
Yeah, that's
When We Were Kings, my favorite documentary. And you won't find Nate Silver's pointy head bullshit roaming around Zaire. Be like, well, actually, Ali might have a chance because of the hand ratio. Blah blah blah. I would turn him over to Mobutu. That's what I would do.
All right, tough but fair. But
that could be a new segment. Turn him over to Mobutu.
Yeah, and these statisticians, they're like the libertarians of the sports world.
Yeah,
if
they're
you listen
also
to sports podcasts, they're always like, I know all the stats guys are going to send me a bunch of emails about what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, exactly. They're also full of shit. I actually agree with some of Nassim Taleb is my favorite non-left writer, and I agree with a lot of his.
He's my favorite friend of Mike Cernovich.
Yeah, he's definitely a favorite friend of Mike Cernovich. I agree.
Who are your top 5 friends of Mike Cernovich?
I'm gonna need to think about the other 4.
Yeah, I don't even know who else he's friends with. Okay, so anyways, let's
Zaid Jalani.
Zaid
Jalani and Nassim Taleb.
He has so whatever you think about that. And as much as I would prefer to read Norman Mailer, I do think that there's something to figuring out stuff that's true. And I think that when he first started writing about elections, you could justify it that way. And, I always kind of knew that he had shitty centrist politics.
Wouldn't that be awesome to see Muhammad Ali dunking on him in a room? In that documentary,
the worst of all time.
King is practicing in the background. And Nate Silver's like, Mr. Ali. And he's just like, pointy head man. Ugh.
But
Muhammad Ali was great at dunking on people.
As he went on though, whatever justification you could have for Nate Silver, that he's differentiating the signal for the noise, he's helping you understand real meaningful statistical information a little bit more all the time, it's just totally gone away, right? At this point, he's just doing horse race punditry everybody else.
Put the tweets up, because this actually, obviously the substance of these tweets are trash, pseudo-woke garbage of the highest order. But as Kyle Kulinski points out, I think Kyle Kulinski calls him stats man or something. Kyle Kulinski's dude, literally your job is number stuff. We could critique the methodology of the number stuff. We could critique even the ideological assumptions behind it, which I will do. But this is not number stuff. Mini thread.
You notice there's no stat anywhere in here to be found.
No, this is all like, this is the naturalized opinion of a certain type of ultra annoying twerp centrist that has an irrational hatred of Bernie Sanders and doesn't care about people having health insurance. Mini thread. If you're someone on the left and you want to defeat Biden, a 76-year-old white man, then maybe backing Sanders, a 77-year-old white guy, is not the way to do it. Like it or not, identity, quote unquote, race, age, gender is a major aspect of what people vote on. You're probably not going to persuade many people to back Bernie over Biden on the basis of electability or quote unquote leadership since Biden was VP. These are disadvantages for you, in fact. So if you're really banking on making up a lot of ground on Bernie being closer to the center of the Democratic electorate on policy, which is not clear he is, or voters agreeing with his institutional critique of the Democratic Party, which most Democrats won't, it's okay. It's early, and the Biden post-announcement polling bounce will probably fade, but it's formidable enough that maybe it ought to prompt more reassessments of strategy. Bernie's limited in the number of arguments he can make versus Biden when another candidate of the left might not be. So, see, this is great. The first response to this, by the way, is perfect, which is the great response to disingenuous, pedantic, immoral nerds like Nate Silver, which is, what if Bernie is great and Biden sucks? Which is basically the distillation of the
What if
segment.
that were true? Yes.
But no, this is incredible. There's no empirical grounds for any of this.
Yeah,
He's asserting, by the way, and I'm not, I want to throw to you in a second, but I just want to be clear. Like, I'm not overly idealistic about people's commitment to policy, but I'm also not going to like completely overcorrect. Okay. I think that, yes, a lot of people vote on sense and sensibility and brand. And I've always said, I think I'm pretty well established in the left pundit sphere of saying, no, Biden's a problem, unfortunately. Like, he sucks, but no, that guy's a problem. He's a formidable candidate. But I also think that, no, I think that after, especially with lower income voters, there's been enough Democratic presidents who've had great appeal as candidates who've delivered little to nothing or maybe even negative when it comes to people's actual needs. So first of all, I would not assume that people are thinking nothing of policy, which is, by the way, what he's conflating under these generic terms like leadership. And by the way, institutional failure of the Democratic Party. I don't know what Nate Silver is like. If he's thinking that most voters are interested in a detailed, nuanced critique of Tom Perez, no. But if he thinks that most normal voters are like, they might like particular individuals. They're going to like President Obama as an example. Do you really think that they're overwhelmingly thrilled with the overall leadership of a chronically under-delivering failed political project in a time when Congress has record low approval ratings, and there's some awareness that this is the same party that couldn't even defeat Donald Trump? Anyways, go ahead.
Yes.
It's just unfucking believable that he's riding. I mean, and this is where, again, it's not Warren's responsibility, but this is how she will be deployed for these relentlessly disingenuous arguments by somebody who would just come out and fucking say it. He wants somebody like Biden.
Yeah.
Because his politics are trash.
And this fantasy and assertion that people like Nate Silver push all the time, that the majority of American people are in the center, right? Which has just been such a failed strategy for the Democratic Party over the past 30 years. It's seen some of the most historic losses for that party. And they keep on saying it as if it's some, true fact. And it's not.
Yeah, I mean, look, an overwhelming majority of Democrats, for example, if we actually care about polls, which used to be Nate's brand,
Right.
Support Medicare for all. So do a majority.
75% of Democratic voters in the poll that showed Biden leading said Medicare for all was very important.
In fact, if we're talking about polls, even a surprising percentage of Republicans support this, right? So this idea, that people are in the center is empirically baseless. And what it gets down to is that Nate Silver doesn't care very much about the policy differences between these people. And the kinds of people who he most identifies with don't care very much, so it doesn't seem very important to him. And in 2016, the way he always expressed that was that, and you can see the evolution here, because in these tweets, he doesn't even find
mask off.
It's totally mask off. He doesn't even find a single lousy stat to hang his hat on like you used to. But in the old days, when he felt the need to be a little bit more ostentatiously data driven, he found this number about how Hillary and Bernie voted together in the Senate. It was 87 or maybe 93% of the time. And he constantly repeated that in 2016.
And it was like, oh yeah, you mean except for the 10% on the invasion of Iraq, bankruptcy bills,
Patriot
major
Act.
trade agreements, the Patriot Act, major elements of the bailout. Even it's no, they voted 90% of the time on recognizing kids softball teams and budget procedures. But so they're basically the same person. Oh yeah, 10% of the time were all of the major issues facing modern America. But yeah, I mean, don't worry about that. This is why statistic and narrow nerd twerp analysis can be a huge problem.
Yeah,
context actually does matter.
No, context matters tremendously. So that's one obvious problem with that stat, that it doesn't mean what he thinks it means, because not everything that comes before the Senate is equally important.
Right.
Another problem is a lot of the things you just rattled off aren't even included in that stat, because at the time when those votes happened, Hillary was in the House and Bernie, Hillary was in the Senate,
Bernie was
in the House.
Yep.
So a third thing, and this is awesome, because look, if you do care about that narrow twerp kind of analysis, well, one of the most basic things that somebody like Nate Silver would classically be telling us to avoid is the hasty generalization fallacy, which is if you have a tiny amount of data and you extrapolate huge things from it. And during those 2 years, they only overlapped for 2 years in the Senate. And during those 2 years, Hillary Clinton barely ever showed up to the Senate because she was running for president. People don't expect presidential candidates to show up except for the votes that are the most important. And so if even out of the votes that were most important to Democratic voters to see that she showed up for, even there they diverged 10% of the time. Right. That should tell you the opposite.
And also things yes, she flipped her position, I believe, when she was running against Obama against trade with Colombia. And that was a major issue because Mark Penn was literally, while being her top advisor, pitching his services to people pushing through the Colombia trade deal. So there's all these things like reading and policy. And by the way, yes, age and geography matter. And I really want, Nate Silver, retweeting Joy Reid does not make one an expert on the complexities of the African American electorate. You fucking moron. Now, can we do a little anecdotal evidence? Is that okay? Can we do a little anecdotal? Is that okay? I know some people don't like anecdotal, but can we do a little I think we should do a little anecdotal. Kyle Kulinski flagged this. And I don't think that this is a bullshit thing. I think this is a very small amount of people, but it might be a geographically significant amount of people that this call represents. This is a guy on C-SPAN calling into C-SPAN on an open line. And again, once we get this up here in a second, I have no doubt that this represents something real in the electorate, because the small group of people that voted for Donald Trump because of the economic populist scam, where are they going to go?
All right.
Election, I trusted Trump. I thought he was going to throw a monkey wrench into the elite establishment and make America great again. And I'm just a regular guy. I'm in sales, and I thought that the whole economy would change across the spectrum. Well, here we are 4 years later, and I got to say, he lied. I'm no better off. My friends who are regular workers are no better off. The Midwest, the Electoral College, no better off. And so this year, if I don't have someone to challenge him on our side, I'm voting for Bernie. I'm voting for Bernie because he makes the most sense. By the way, I'm paying $387 for a bottle of diabetic medicine. So there are a lot of issues I like with Bernie, and he It just makes more sense.
Healthcare for you, your top issue?
I'm sorry?
Is healthcare your top issue?
Absolutely. I think healthcare is a top issue for what we call human beings, because without our health, we're dead, you see. So health has to be the top issue for everyone, regardless of party. For the last 40 years, there have been 6 consecutive presidents that have favored the rich companies, and I'm a what you call an old-fashioned Republican. That's why I voted for Trump, because he promised the Midwest is going to regain what it once had. Ask anyone in the Midwest. Ask people in the middle of the country, are they better off? The answer is hell no. And Bernie Sanders is the only person running that's for actual people.
Now, look, there's a cynic in me that's like, that's definitely a clever older Jewish gentleman from the Upper West Side. He's a member of DSA. It strongly supports Bernie. That accent doesn't exactly reek Midwest. But all kidding aside, I do think that's a real call. And I just want to say, and a real attitude, that represents, it, even if it is 400,000 people that voted for Trump because of a misplaced belief in his lies about economic populism, guess where those people are located? They're not located in, South Carolina, where he's driving up reactionary totals. They're located in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. That must be one. And also, I would just say, too, to people who are, obviously, if you're here, you're going to be extremely politically informed. But most people, I have absolutely heard people who self-identify as conservative Republicans discoursing not only extreme left, actually populist economic views, but actually some pretty decent views on even race. People are not ideologically consistent. They're all over the place, and you look for the opening. And Sanders is a candidate that can definitely speak to those openings, without a doubt.
Yeah. And, also, I think just to go back for just a second to the twerpy stats.
Please.
If,
I love you for twerpy stats. I just don't like Nate Silver.
No. Well, you know, okay. The fundamental difference between me and Nate Silver I think there are a lot of differences,
Good,
but the
bad
is that I own the fact that I have an ideological perspective,
right?
That I'm a socialist. I want the working class, to achieve certain political goals, and Nate wants to present his views as news from nowhere, as he's just extrapolating from statistical facts when clearly he has an ideological position, but it's in bad faith. He won't own it. So that's the difference there. But on the subject of the twerpy stats, this guy, is presumably white, so he voted for Donald Trump. But when we talk about people in states like Michigan, where I'm from, who didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 because they had the kinds of attitudes that he's describing, well, some of the white ones voted for Trump, but the black and Hispanic ones just stayed home.
Right.
They have, if as many African-American voters in Detroit and Flint had voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 as voted for Barack Obama in 2012, she would have won the state.
Absolutely. And again, we have, Malaika Jabali, a frequent guest on this show, makes precisely that point. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.